Welcome everyone to the League of Women Voters Candidates Night. I want to thank all the candidates for coming and also all the volunteers. This event is being recorded and broadcast live. It will be rebroadcast on our local access channels, Charter 191 and Verizon 33. You can also check it out on the website, video on demand, at graftontv.org. We do not allow any others to record this event. This is to prevent any possible editing. Let me introduce you now our moderator, Sue Flykop. She comes from the League of Women Voters of Whaling. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Anne and all the volunteers here from the League of Women Voters of Grafton and Shrewsbury for organizing tonight's event and for asking me to moderate. To start, I'm going to read the League's nonpartisan policy. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization working to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. It does support or oppose legislation after study and consensus agreement among its members. The Grafton Town Meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 15th, and the town election will be on Tuesday, May 21st. If you need a mail-in ballot, please contact the the town clerk's office, sorry. The first segment of tonight's forum is for candidates who are running unopposed. They will make brief statements. So we have 3 in the audience right now, if you can come up and take seats. May 13th. Okay. All right. A correction. The Grafton Town Meeting is on Monday, May 13th. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We have, there are 3 candidates for three-year terms at the Library Trustees, and right here we have Douglas Bowman and Aaron Van de Steen to make their statements. Douglas, why don't you go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Doug Bowman. I've been a library trustee. I'm up for re-election for library trustee. I've been a trustee for about 14 years. Really enjoyed working with the library, working with the community, working with the staff, the business community. As you know, the library the past couple of years has been quite exciting. We've got the new building. I was the representative for the building committee. Really enjoyed working on that also. That's not to say that it hasn't been without its challenges. As many of you know, in the last couple months or so, we're in the process of hiring a new library director. So we've got a lot of excitement coming in the library, and I'm looking forward to continuing to support the town with the library.
Thank you. And Aaron?
Aaron Van de Steen. I've been a Grafton resident about 15 years and a library trustee. This will be my 3rd term. And why vote for me? I was the chair of the library board during the pandemic, and myself and the rest of the board, worked very hard to make sure that essential services from the library were provided to the town. And also during my recent term, I've also been the chair of the policy committee and essential in creating equitable policies for the library. But one policy that I'm particularly proud of is the fine-free policy, which means that no Grafton resident will pay late fees for any of their late items, which was a trend that we were seeing, across the state of Massachusetts and now the rest of the country. So quite proud of that. But I've not always been a supporter of libraries. I freely admit that because I think it kind of speaks to my character. My eyesight has kind of deteriorated over the past few years, and reading a book was very hard for me. But when I had young kids, I would bring them to the library and found that libraries are more about stories and less about books. And there's a lot of different ways to tell a story, and I think the Grafton Public Library does that very well. And now I'm an audiobook junkie. There's all kinds of DVDs, and in the age of Netflix and things that are kind of you watch it once or you look at it once. You don't want to clutter your house with those things. So I think the library is a really great place for that. So please vote for me, and thank you very much.
Thank you. The third candidate, Christopher Billitz, is not here, but there are 3 candidates for 3 open seats for library trustee. For planning board, there are 2 open seats. These are 3-year terms, and we have 1 candidate here who's going to make a statement, Robert Hassinger.
Good evening. Some of you may know me. I've been on the planning board for a while. Laughs out there. We moved to Grafton, moved into the house we're in '73, so I have a pretty good sense of the town. I want to thank the league for doing this, as you have for as long as I can remember. I think it goes back pretty much to when we got here, or almost. I just want to say that there's a lot coming soon that's going to be involving the planning board. I think I'll let some of that be announced when the time comes, but I think we have a very good board and a very good planning staff who are working very well together, and I think we're well positioned to do what's needed and to do a good job for the town on those that are coming. I'm always happy to talk with anyone. We have some limitations on what we can talk about because of open meeting laws and rules around public hearings, but I do my best to help out when I can. I think that's about it.
Okay. Thank you. There is another candidate for the other open seat for the planning board, Justin Wood, who is not here tonight. And for the housing authority, there...
I just thought of something.
Okay.
There is an opening for the planning board.
Okay.
Right now, we're losing one of our members because he has to move out of town, and it's open right now to put in for an appointment if you should be interested.
So a little free advertising there. Okay. For the Housing Authority, there is 1 open seat. It's a 5-year term, and Sean McAvee is running, and he's not here tonight, but he will be on your ballot. So thank you for coming tonight and giving us your statement.
Thank you very much.
Our next segment is for candidates in contested races. Some of the questions tonight, some of the questions tonight will have been submitted to the league. There will be 1 question that was submitted in advance. And if people behind me have other questions to submit, please just hold up your hand or try and reach out to the volunteers here. Please note that if there are several questions on the same topic, they may be combined, and we may not get to all the questions tonight, given time constraints. So we're going to start with the 4 candidates for school committee. If they can come up and take seats. Thank you. And do you have name tags? Okay, alphabetically would be great. So it'd be Craig, Christy, Laura, and Elizabeth.
Just, it's too hot for me. Thanks.
All set? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
There are 2 openings for 3-year terms on the school committee. The order that we've already told the candidates will be in alphabetical order, and they'll have 3 minutes for their opening statements. When we get to the questions, each candidate will be asked the same question and have 1.5 minutes to answer. And then there will be closing statements that are 1 minute each in the reverse order of the opening statements. So we're going to start with our opening statements, 3 minutes each, and we'll start with Craig Julis.
So thank you very much for the invite again. It's becoming an annual tradition of the spring is to come to these debates or to run for school committee. My name is Craig Julis. I live at 44 Browns Road with my wife, who grew up here in town. We have 2 children. Emma's graduating in a few weeks, and our son is about to become a sophomore at the high school. I think tonight I'm going to try and do a little something different in terms of an opening statement. Tonight you're going to hear about people's experiences in terms of why and things they've done around town and volunteering services. So let me give you some background into my experience of serving on school councils, PTO meetings, athletic advisory councils, all my role in 22 years in education, both as a classroom teacher and administrator. On the opposite side of that, I also have experience in terms of sitting on collaborative committees within schools, working on things in terms of user fee development, school safety and building security, PLCs, professional learning communities, RTI meetings, which is a response tiered intervention, IEP meetings, 504 meetings. So those are all the different experiences that I bring in my own professional experience working in schools over the past 22 years. I did retire 4 years ago from education and moved into something else, but those are my different experiences working, and not necessarily volunteering, but working in all those different facets within public education. In terms of, you might hear words, in terms of like educational jargon, SEL, inclusion, so on and so forth. Working in inclusion, yep, we've done that in all the middle schools that I worked in. We had team structures. We really worked hard to ensure that it was consistently done across the board in terms of what the expectations were, but more importantly, what the supports were when students struggled. So no matter what team they were on, students were well supported. Within the classroom, we worked to ensure that the percentages of students who were on 504s and IEPs were kept low, to ensure that when that extra teacher was placed into the room, we maximized the effectiveness of that teacher. To further develop that, my last 3 years in Medway, we actually brought in, I believe it was the Rebus Institute, to provide coaching, mentoring, and observation of our co-teachers, so they could learn the philosophy behind it. They could implement that into the classroom and then receive support. And you might also hear things about, how schools progress through COVID. I was the person on March 13th, 2020, who told our staff we're going to have a week off. It then progressed into closing school, reopening school, and then moving through the whole process of getting our students back in. Whether that was doing substitute coverage each morning, staffing 2 cafeterias, 2 recess areas, and everything in between. Those are all the different experiences I had. So I think in terms of bringing that to our committee, that professional experience, while not here in Grafton, would suit me well to really start to move our students forward and to ensure our students get the education that they deserve.
Great, thank you. Christy Kiel-Basinski,
Yes.
you are up next. 3 minutes. I forgot to mention the timers are over here, and they'll
Flag you.
Yeah.
wave little signs, let you know how much
light.
time you have left.
Okay. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having me here tonight. My name is Christy Kiel-Basinski, although I'm simply known throughout the community as Michael, Alex, or Thomas's mom. Many of you may also remember me as Christy Postero. I have lived in Grafton my entire life, and it's where generations of my family continue to reside. I know the Grafton school system because I'm a product of it. In fact, I even went to school in this very building and had Mrs. Parker right upstairs as my 4th grade teacher. I remember the pancake breakfasts with Mr. Lindbergh, listening to Mr. Garu's wild readings of Animal Farm while perched up on an upside-down garbage can, sweating in the old high school gym at every graduation. The dedicated teachers of Grafton shaped who I am today. I can even hear Mr. Carter right now in my ear telling me to speak up for the troops overseas. The teachers here instilled in me the value of hard work, perseverance, and adaptability. Those values have guided me throughout my entire life. The work ethic taught to me here in Grafton led me to earn my bachelor's degree in accounting in just 2 years. I then went on and earned my MBA, master's certificate in human resources, and passed my MTELs for high school business, all by the age of 22. My passion for education and numbers, fueled by Mr. Caputo, propelled me into a career of finance at Boston University. That was up until the birth of my first child, after which time I became a stay-at-home mom. Now, as a parent of 3 children attending multiple schools across the district, I've had the joy of experiencing the Grafton public school system yet again, but this time as a mother. Through this time, I have maintained the values of Grafton that have been instilled in me, and I've been a dedicated volunteer and advocate. Grafton is not just a home to me, it is my family. And like any family, I know that in order to thrive and evolve, we must embrace change. This is why over the years I've been a passionate advocate for updating policies, enhancing reading programs, and improving traffic safety measures. Because even though I was once able to play at the super park and easily cross Providence Road to go up to the country store for some candy, that time has changed. And now I'm asking the voters of Grafton to make a change too, and vote for me on Tuesday, May 21st for school committee. To know where we are going, we must first know where we've been. And no one at this table has a greater knowledge of Grafton than me. I'm dedicated to seeing our Grafton family thrive and succeed in the future. Please vote Christy Kilbazinski on Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. And Laura Often, 3 minutes to you.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this event and the other candidates for participating. My name is Laura Often, and I am running for re-election to the Grafton School Committee. I've served on the school committee for the past 10 years, and I am proud of the role that I have served in help growing and improving the Grafton schools. In fact, this year, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees honored me with a Lifetime Achievement Award for my work in the Grafton schools. Fortunately, I still have a lot of lifetime left and still more work to do. Before I joined the committee, I chaired the Superintendent Search Committee, which ultimately led to hiring Jay Cummings. Then I spent the next several years volunteering within the schools, serving on school advisory committees as president of the North Grafton Parent-Teacher Group and coordinating enrichment programs from grades 1 through 6, as well as running the popular holiday breakfast for 8 years, among many, many other activities. It was through that work that I was able to build relationships and partnerships within the Grafton community. On the school committee, I have created more equitable and inclusive policies, such as dress code and homework policies. And I will add that I do not consider inclusive a jargon word. I have fought for increased fundings for the schools on 2 override committees. And while chairing the American Rescue Plan Act, I advocated for the funding for the HVAC system for the Grafton Middle School. In addition, I led the committee through COVID and worked with the superintendent to increase real-time communication with our families. We have done tremendous work to improve our schools. We have added adjustment counselors in all our schools to help our students with their mental health. We have increased elective courses in the high school, partnered with local colleges, and created the GAIN program to help our 18 to 22-year-old students. And while the future is bright, our schools still face many challenges. Our students are still recovering from the pandemic. Our teachers are facing changing curriculums, and our schools are facing our biggest funding deficit over the next few years. Our Grafton schools deserve and need someone with experience, passion, and the relationships to help guide them through the next challenges and to ensure that our schools are the best they can be for the next generation of students. And I hope to earn your vote for re-election on May 21st.
Thank you. And Elizabeth Spinney, 3 minutes to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Spinney, the current vice chair of the Grafton School Committee. I have 3 kids, a graduating senior, a sophomore, and an 8th grader, Maddie, who's here today. Hi, Maddie. I have a degree in engineering from the Ohio State University and a law degree from the University of Notre Dame, and I've been practicing law for over 20 years. I was first elected to the school committee in June of 2020. At that time, people thought I was crazy. Why would you want to do this now when no one knows what next year is going to look like? I heard very often. But like Seal said, we're never going to survive unless we are a little crazy. But anyway, I survived. And what the school district did that year was nothing short of amazing. It was difficult, and none of our decisions were perfect because none of them meant that students would be going to school in a world without COVID. But we worked very hard. We did an immense amount of research. We stayed up many nights trying to solve the tremendous problems we were facing, and we made it through. So that was my first 2 years on the school committee. Constantly changing, planning, never the same old, same old. And in the midst of all that, during my term, we've made significant progress in other areas as well. For example, like it's often mentioned, getting the new HVAC system that had been in use over 50 years in the middle school replaced. Hiring new adjustment counselors who are now able to reach even the most under-the-radar students by being able to have programs in the classrooms. And ensuring the override funds were able to reach as far as possible into 5 years, which many people thought could not happen, especially with COVID. And one of the reasons that we've been able to accomplish so much is because we have a very well-functioning board. Now, that doesn't mean we don't disagree. We do. And I firmly believe that to get the best results, you need to weigh and challenge differing opinions. In the 4 years that I've been on the committee, that's 1 year of a remaining term plus one full term, we've had members with different backgrounds, different experiences and opinions, and we've had some great discussions. In local campaigns over the years, I've often heard people talk about consensus building, but you haven't heard that much in this campaign because that's what we already do. I hope to be able to continue to do this for another term. I'm committed to helping Grafton schools continue to improve. And I hope that I've proven my dedication with the countless hours of volunteer leadership over the last 9 years, starting as NGES yearbook editor, PTG co-president, running the sixth grade yearbook club, co-chairing fundraising for the classes of 2024 and 2026, the Bon Voyage Committee, which provides a safe graduation night for recent grads, the 8th grade DC trip fundraising, teacher appreciation, etc. To help our biggest issue, funding, in 2020, I led the Yes Grafton Committee to help pass the override, which meant an additional $2.8 million for Grafton schools, and I have provided another $500,000 for the schools through my fundraising efforts. So on the committee, I apply the same kind of dedication. So if you want someone on the school committee with proven dedication to our schools, with experience and knowledge to guide them through the toughest of times, who's a strong leader, passionate about education, please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're ready to start our questions, and we're going to start with you, Christy, first.
Yes.
Several of you mentioned the idea of funding, and that is the topic of our first question. The biggest challenge facing Grafton schools is funding. If elected, how do you plan to address this issue?
Yes, funding is the biggest issue right now. We are ranked 9th from the bottom in terms of peer pupil expenditures in the state. That puts us in the bottom 3%, creating an annual shortfall of nearly $12 million from the state average. It is clear that we do not receive the adequate funding from the state, and the formula being used to distribute Chapter 70 funds is not equitable. It is also clear that relying on overrides isn't a sustainable method for funding our schools. While Grafton will face yet another override in FY29, and it is necessary, it cannot be relied upon every 3 to 5 years. If elected to school committee, I would work first by tirelessly advocating for fair state funding formulas to ensure that Grafton receives its proper share of state resources. Additionally, I would focus on exploring alternative revenue streams and maximize existing resources within the district. Mostly, I would prioritize transparency and efficiency in budget allocation, assuring that every dollar is spent efficiently to the benefit of our students. Collaborating with community members and stakeholders and engaging in open dialogue are the key to developing a sustainable long-term solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And the question next goes to Elizabeth.
I went to a school that was very similar to Grafton, and unfortunately, it was perpetually underfunded because we couldn't pass overrides. And as a result, I worked very hard in school, and I did very well amongst my peers. But when I went to college, I was almost embarrassingly underprepared, and I don't want to see that happen to Grafton. So the funding issue is something that is extremely important to me. I think Grafton does an amazing job. It is incredibly efficient. As Dr. Cummings has often said, you get one of the best values for your dollar by sending your kids to Grafton schools. But we are 17% below the state average. We are funding extremely efficiently. What I think we're looking at in the next few years is we're looking at new growth. We're looking at economic development, looking at what's coming into Grafton. But when we run the numbers and see that that's not going to be enough to be able to maintain the services that we're providing in Grafton, I think that I would be able to use my experience and my knowledge both on the committee and in working with override committees and helping to pass that override in 2020 as chair of the Yes Grafton Committee to advocate in the public and give people the information that they need to be able to support an override if Grafton needs it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Craig, a minute and a half to you.
Sure. Working in North Attleboro, larger district, same budget woe. In terms of low per pupil expenditure, year after year, and that was very much a town against an override. I don't really have a problem with an override. I don't think that should be your strategic plan to fund schools. I think in terms of looking at how we fund schools, the school funding issue with Chapter 70 has been around since 2009 when I started at North Attleboro moving from Blackstone Millville. It's been an ongoing issue throughout the state. And I think it'll take groups like the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and people pushing to make that change with the state. I don't really have a hope for it because it's a very tall task to make or a tall task to change. I think in terms of looking at schools, working within budgets, I think part of the conversation needs to be, at some point, if you don't have an override, what are you prepared to cut? We're being pushed into and painted into a corner where there might not be a solution if an override doesn't succeed with maintaining what we have. And it's a horrible thing to say, and it's a horrible idea to think about because it's someone's livelihood, but in some cases that becomes the reality. For me, looking at things, for the past 5 years, haven't had user fees. Now, that's not the solution, but it's certainly one of those 1,000 paper cuts that could certainly help. Schools that I've worked in have used user fees to offset the costs for all of their athletic and extracurricular programs. The second thing, we're supposed to charge for football and basketball games, and we're not doing that either.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to our next question.
Excuse me. I'd like a chance to answer the question if that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I marked you off. I'm sorry. Of course.
That's okay.
A minute and a half to you.
I like to think it was a terrific answer and really good. So thank you. So this was a question that was submitted ahead of us, and I think my three candidates answered it very well. And I thought the answer that people are expecting to hear was probably that we need to go line by line through the budget, like in the movie Dave, and we're going to save all of our programs. And of course, I believe in spending our money wisely. I look at the budget, we look at it weekly when we sign our warrant. It's something I carry around with me. But the fact is, and as Christy pointed out, we're actually 11th from the bottom, but 9th, 11th, it doesn't really matter. We're in the bottom of per pupil spending in the state of Massachusetts. So that's not a spending problem, that's a funding problem, as Craig pointed out. And in the upcoming years, we're going to need millions of dollars to cut the budgets. So absolutely, things like user fees and all of those things, if you can help make that add up to millions of dollars, that would be amazing. Whatever cuts we make are going to hurt students and teachers, no matter how you look at it. And one thing I'd like the audience to know is school committee we have nothing to do with an override. That's a select board decision to make. So what our job is to do is to make sure we're spending the money wisely. And I'm going to do what I always do and what I've done for the past 10 years, which is to fight like hell and advocate for our students across this town and this state to make sure we get what we need. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies again.
That's okay.
I haven't done that for quite a while.
That's all right. I won't let anybody forget me. Don't worry.
I have numbers listed. For some reason, I checked you off. Okay, Laura, we're actually going to start with you. Next question. What is the most important role of the school committee?
Ooh, that's a great question. Three things. We oversee the superintendent. We work on policy and we work on budgeting. So we help make the budget over the years and then we turn it over to the superintendent. Those are the three official things. What I really believe that people don't see in the background is all of the listening we have to do within the community. And those are things that they don't get put on Facebook. You're not seeing them in meetings. We're there. We're the last call. So when you call us, you've gone through every step. People who call me usually aren't happy. So there's a lot of listening, there's a lot of counseling, and there's a lot of helping that you need to do to make sure that community members get their questions answered. Parents are able to do that. I worked really hard. What people may not know is Dr. Cummings didn't know what Facebook was. I helped hook him up with the page, and we have actively been doing real-time communication to help answer questions through parents across the year. A school committee is overseeing our values. So when you come up here and you have someone that's spouting things that maybe aren't best for all kids, you need to look at who's representing our school. To me, we are the overseers of the district. So I'm proud to be on it, and I appreciate this question. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christy, the question to you.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. What is the most important role of the school committee?
I believe the most important role of the school committee is accountability. As Ms. Often said, the school committee has three major functions: superintendent, budget, and policy. They are responsible for holding the superintendent accountable for his job roles and making sure that he maintains the school in a manner which we believe is efficient. Also, in maintaining the budget, showing that, as Ms. Often said, money is being spent efficiently and effectively. And thirdly is policy, and that is to make sure that policies are being upheld and updated. And that is why, in 2022, I brought to the superintendent 248 policies that were no longer being updated by the school committee. And that is why our policies were then transferred to MASC. Since then, the superintendent has taken over policy. And on April 9th of this year, he reached out to me to work with him to effectively change and work with moving over policy to MASC. And that is what I believe the key function of the school committee is accountability.
Thank you. And Craig, the question to you.
Okay. Don't think I have to repeat that the school committee hires the superintendent, oversees the budget, and sets school policy. I think that's been covered. Liz, I don't know, are you going to cover that too? Just make it a fair thing, make sure it's really reinforced.
They heard it.
I think coming from my background, I think in terms of looking at a school committee, I think while they do all those things, I think in terms of setting the tone of support for their teachers, for their parents, for the students, I've had school committee members disagree with me, and eventually, for whatever reason, we come to a consensus. I think in terms of when the school committee is seen, I think when they're supporting the three stakeholders within a school, which are parents, the students, and the staff, I think that's a very powerful message to send to people. And I think in terms of coming from my background, where I've seen how policy comes down and impacts the classroom, impacts the main office, I think in terms of bringing that kind of experience to a school committee position, I think very much helps to see how the teachers empathize with where the teachers are in terms of their day-to-day. I think in terms of supporting our students and supporting our families, because when one of those three pieces is missing, our schools don't function properly as they should, because all three of those should be working in unison together. I think that's part of the school committee and where they can really have a very strong impact.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, the question
Before
to
we
you.
start, I have a question. Are we given time for rebuttals in this? We are.
Okay, I prefer not to do rebuttals because we have a whole pile of questions here I'd like to get to, but you haven't even given your first
I know.
your first
Well,
answer.
I've heard the other responses, so I just wanted to know time how I frame this. Okay. So I think they talked about a lot of things. I think the most important thing is that we, as Ms. Often said, we are the people, the group who needs to make the final decision. So I think most important thing is that we are the people who are the most knowledgeable in the room, that we have done the research, that we have gone out and talked to people, that we have formed relationships with the principals, with the administrators, with parents and students to be able to get the information that we need to be able to make the best decisions in the end. And I think the other role is getting information from the community, being able to make sure that people know that they can access us through email. I was very happy to support the 15 minutes of public comment that we have in the beginning of our meetings, and we make sure that it's at the beginning so that it's convenient for people so they can go if they need to. And I'd love to have people come and voice their opinion, and we use that. And I think that with respect to, I'm gonna end there and say that I think being the voice of the community as well. So when policy changes are made, and policy changes are made by the school committee, not by the superintendent, we vote on those and we change them, that those are communicated clearly to the community so that they know what it means for their students. The superintendent does communicate those to the staff, but we do it to the community. And there are lots of other things. Thanks.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so next question. Elizabeth, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
So we talked about the funding challenge that Grafton schools are facing. What two other challenges will the school committee be facing in the coming term?
I think one thing that we're seeing, you ready?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of the chime,
Okay.
but I won't right now.
Okay. Tell me when to start. Okay. I think one thing that we're continuing to see, I mean, the kids went through COVID a few years ago, and things were very different for them. But I think we're still seeing a lot of repercussions from COVID. And one of those challenges is in attendance. So districts, and it's not unique to Grafton, districts across the Commonwealth are seeing an attendance issue where kids are missing 10% of the days that they're supposed to go to school. It's 180 days a year, give or take. And we see kids who are perpetually absent. Now, I think that could be the cause of a lot of different things, but we are looking at stress. We are looking at whether it's something that kids are just staying home more because during COVID, we told them to stay home when you're sick. And before that, you know, unless you had 105 temperature, you were sending your kid out to school. But we said, stay home, stay home, stay home. So we're trying to find out what is going on with that and make sure that kids are not only coming to school, but that they want to come to school, that they feel safe, that they feel respected, that they feel like they are getting the most out of their education. One of the things that we did during COVID, which was great, is we found a lot of technology that was helpful. But are those resources the best resources to get the kids in the classroom? So all of those things we're looking at as one of the big issues that we're facing in the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, the question to you, so 2 other challenges you see facing the school committee.
So I would agree with the COVID closure. My concern, not so much on attendance, but, you know, as I've said over the past 2 years, 4 years later with my 8th grader, still hearing the jokes about, well, you guys missed this, you weren't in school. Oh, that's right, you guys were in 8th grade during the closure. My concern would be, where are those kids? So if my son's a sophomore, he was in, I believe, 6th grade. So where are those students now and how are they progressing and have those gaps been closed? Because if you were in 1st grade learning how to read and write during the closure or during the hybrid after that, how has that impacted, just using reading as an example, how has that been addressed? Have those gaps been closed? Because without COVID, even prior to COVID, reading comprehension issues that weren't addressed in primary grade levels, as a student got to middle school, they became more complicated. They affected the student in terms of academics. That led, in some cases, to perhaps the student disengaging and not being connected to school. So I think that's one of the challenges. I think the other challenge, again, having a student who's about to graduate, I would like to see a lot more done in terms of college and career planning. I think juniors should leave with their parents at the end of their junior year with a plan for what they're going to be doing over that summer before their senior year. I was disheartened to hear that, you know, guidance counselor didn't know that my student was interested in going to college until she asked for her transcripts. So those types of things, I think those are little areas that could really help our students in terms of whether they go off to college, whether they go into a career. I think that planning should be happening by their junior year, but realistically it should be happening a little bit sooner than that.
Okay, thank you. And Laura, question to you.
Thank you so much. So, I would say some of the things that we're seeing still as big challenges with our students and our teachers are mental health and equity. Mental health is what I think affects all the things that come underneath. So if you're not able to concentrate, if you don't feel well, then you can't come to school. So that feeds into absency. You can't read or write, you can't focus. We have started at the schools, we've both mentioned, Liz and I, about the hiring of the adjustment counselors. We're working with our children on creating programs to help recognize their anxiety and what to do with it, and to giving them access to ask for help, and it's okay. We're helping our seniors and juniors prepare for college. We recently, in the past year, hired a college and career counselor that lives at the high school and provides students with what they need if they want to go to college. And we've updated our website with plans on what kids need to do when they're looking from junior and sophomore year, what needs to be done. So we're helping to relieve some of that anxiety. I still have concerns about equity within the schools. We see that across the board. It's sometimes class, it's sometimes their own sexuality, making sure that kids feel safe and are being comfortable at school and able to being with people that recognize each other's differences and celebrate them and make them feel safe in their environment is very important to me.
Okay, thank you. And our next question, we're going to start with.
You skipped me
Did
that
I do
time.
that again? I am sorry. That doesn't usually happen.
That's okay.
I apologize.
Could you repeat the question?
Of course. What are the, other than the funding, what do you see as the two biggest challenges facing the school committee?
Okay, two biggest challenges facing the school committee. I agree with Craig. One of the biggest challenges facing the school committee is COVID. The COVID repercussions will be lasting, I believe, for the next 8 years. I even see it in my fourth grader when he was in third grade and went on his first ever field trip. Those children, they were like kindergarteners going away for the first time. They did not receive the experiences that were to lead them up to fourth or third or fifth grade. And they'll be facing these problems all the way through the end of high school, I believe. Another issue that we're going to be faced with is making our buildings ADA compliant, which is going to be a huge undertaking for the Grafton schools. For example, the North Grafton Elementary School, which I attended and my mother attended, was built in the 1950s and is not built for what is used for today. Just putting in doorknobs, making sinks accessible for kids, making it all accessible for the students of Grafton and the teachers of Grafton will be a huge undertaking and one which we will have to be faced for the next few years that we will need to overcome. So those are what I believe are the challenges facing the school.
Okay, thank you. Everyone's gone now, right? Okay. Next question. We're going to start with Craig. How can the school committee provide an equitable education for families of all kinds in Grafton?
Well, I think the great thing about public schools, we welcome all the students that walk into our building. We welcome their families. And I think, and part of that is having that kind of environment where everyone feels welcome. As a classroom teacher, and I said this 3 years ago, I didn't want my students to know where I stood. Because if they didn't know where I stood, and I understood my perhaps perception of power, but I held influence over students. If I said something, they'd be more likely to follow just because that's what he said, or she said if on the other side. I think in terms of having that kind of environment where students feel supported by all their teachers, they have that connection, and in many cases taking the couple of extra minutes to get to know your students as a teacher and as an administrator, that's where everyone comes in and starts to feel welcome. And it works in terms of academics, it works in terms of interventions for academic support, and having to deal with discipline for roughly 13 years, you need to treat everyone exactly the same in terms of that as you go through due process. And I think that's the important part. You need to have that. And when that's not there, people are not going to feel supported. They're going to feel, well, this person has this, or this person believes that. I really take pride in the fact that in 22 years of education, people didn't know where I stood politically. They didn't know what my own personal thoughts were. But they knew I was there to support them academically. They knew I was there to keep them safe, and I was there to help them when they struggled.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, the question to you.
Sure, thank you. First of all, we recently, in the school district, we finished an equity audit, which I'm really looking forward to looking at that and digesting it and applying it. But just on a personal level, from my perspective, there are a few things that I think, first of all, I think it's incredibly important that every student feels welcome, feels a part of the school. And I think that extends not just to the schools, but to their families as well. And a couple of ways that I think the school district can do that is, one of them, Craig mentioned connections. And I think we've worked really hard over the past couple of years on helping to develop those connections so that students have someone that they feel like they can go to in the school. I also think it's great to see the development of more affinity groups in Grafton. I think during COVID, even certain groups, just activity groups, were lessened and the participation was down. And we looked at ways to try to increase that, and I think it's sort of coming back. And I think that's a great way to help people kind of find their peers, find their people that they can talk to within the school district. And the other one that I think is really interesting, and on an academic level, I'm happy to see, is the different modes of instruction. So finding different ways to teach kids and reaching them where they are, and finding the kids are coming from different backgrounds and have different ways of learning, and they apply that through those modes.
Thank you. And Laura, the question to you.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I do think this is one of the concerns of mine. To me, equity doesn't mean giving every kid the exact same thing. It's giving every student what they need to learn, whether that's providing them with free technology to bring home, so every child's working on the same technology, or allowing students to participate in sports without having to pay a high fee, so that allows everybody to be able to do that. It's adding additional sports that may not be cut sports, so kids have a chance. We added an additional soccer team to give more kids a chance to play this year. It's talking and listening. As I mentioned earlier, we have a student advisory council that we meet with 4 times a year, that we sit and talk and listen to the students, and we come up with solutions for them on what they can do. We go into the school sometimes and conduct listening sessions with kids and asking them how are they feeling. And as people have mentioned, it is that in providing a safe place for kids, so knowing that they belong and they welcome regardless of who they are or who their family is or where they come from, and expanding our teaching to make sure that we're reaching kids in the ways that they need to be reached, whether that's differentiating education within the classroom, having special in before school activities for them to come in and get additional reading help, or anything that they need. It's making sure that we can provide for all learners different ways to learn and making sure that that's there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Christy?
So I actually agree with everybody up here. And developing groups helps students because they are no longer just an individual. They have like people. And once you have somebody that's like you, you're able to then be together. And you feel more comfortable seeking other opportunities within the school. Developing connections with teachers is key to every part of the school system. And yes, we need to appreciate everyone, and everyone has a different background. Such as my husband, he came to America and he began school, and he had to enter English as a second language in high school. Some of those friendships he developed then, he still has today. And it's because you find each other and you grow together. I believe that children, such as some of my own, need to find other kids to feel accepted. And so in that, I think that Grafton is doing a good job, but we can always do better. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you. All right, our next question, Christy, you'll be first. Tell us more about how you will support a fiscally conservative approach as you enter contract negotiations with every bargaining unit.
How I would develop. Well, it's very difficult in Grafton because, as we've stated, we are in the bottom 3% of the state in terms of funding. So it's hard to determine what you would do in this situation because it's like taking blood from a stone at some point. Well, we believe that every teacher deserves an adequate increase, and they should receive an adequate increase. We need to figure out in the budget how to make that possible. Our teachers in Grafton are our biggest resource, and they deserve what's best from the town and from the school. And I support the teachers and I support the paraprofessionals in the building because without them, our students will not succeed at all. So that is my answer.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, the question to you.
Sure. I'm fairly confident I'm the only one on the group here who was in year 10 of teaching and really concerned about, do I go off and do something else? Do I leave teaching, or perhaps even going through the MTRS grid to figure out how many years to get to this part of my retirement, and you get so many percentage of your last 3 years. And I think that's a part that I would bring to looking at, you have all 4 collective bargaining units up at one point, or at the same time. And as Christy mentioned and everyone else has mentioned, you have a painful budget coming up over the next couple of years. So in terms of really supporting the teachers, you saw them at the school committee meeting in April where they kind of laid out their situation. And I think, the teacher friends that I have around town, they're in that exact same boat. In the gym in the morning, they're trying to figure out how many more years do I have to do this? Or the question becomes, If I leave teaching and go to a different district, you lose your professional status and you start again at year 1. Now, if you're a math, science, or like a specialized content area, yeah, that could work because you're in demand. I was a social studies teacher. Finding a social studies teacher is like falling out of a boat and hitting water. So I think in terms of approaching that, it's not simply a budget number, it's people who have invested their lives to doing that kind of work. And that really has to be in the back of your mind, whether you're financially conservative or on the other side of that.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, a question to you?
Well, I'm not going to answer the question specifically because I'm on the school committee currently and we are in the middle of negotiations. But I will say just generically, I am an attorney and I work in contract negotiations all the time. So just generically, that is a skill that I bring to the committee when it is something that we have to do every 3 years or so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Laura?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Liz. It's kind of an unfair question for the incumbents because we're in negotiations right now. So
I apologize. I
we're,
didn't realize that.
Yeah, I don't want to violate any bargaining agreements that we've made. I will say that this is my 3rd teacher contract that I'm in. I've worked with them through difficult times and happier times. I didn't talk about my background, but I come from 2 teachers. My father walked the strike line when I was 4 years old and got a dog named Strikey. And what we're facing, and I know this was a fiscally conservative question, but what we're facing is we're seeing our paras are being drastically underpaid. Our teachers, we're working to help them, to pay them, and that's our biggest part of our budget is 80-something% of our budget. So it's what you value, and we obviously value our professionals all across the board. And I've used my experience of building those relationships throughout the years to help come to the table and help listen to each other and come to a fair agreement that will help everybody, including the town of Grafton, because we do represent them and the funding that we have, although very limited funding.
Okay, thank you. One more question. There's so many good questions here. Okay, I guess let's ask this one. It's a good wrap-up question before your closing statements. So there are 2 questions that are similar, asking what experiences, what qualities you bring to the table that distinguishes you from your fellow candidates. So let's start with Laura first on that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'll say it. I've been on the committee for 10 years. I have seen many changes over the years, and I have continued to adapt with the challenges that have come across our committee and our school district. Grafton is very different than it was 10 years ago when I first came onto the committee, and I've had to study and learn and grow and use my professional development to help bring new ideas to the table. One thing that hasn't changed is my dedication and consistency and love for this district. We all have kids that have been in the district, and I never have done it for my children. And I have always been there for other people's children, and I hope to continue to do that for as long as Grafton will have me.
Okay, thank you. And Elizabeth, the question to you.
Well, I just mentioned my legal experience, which I think does come into play often and is helpful. It also comes into play in policy drafting and finding that language that is able to work in many of the updates. And sometimes we have some difficult policies that we're looking at, and finding the right language is key. I also think that some key characteristics that I bring to the committee are knowledge and understanding of all aspects of the job. So it's not just the school committee functions, it's also how we function within the municipality, how we work with other bodies of government, bodies of the government, including the finance committee, the select board, understanding the budget process, and the ability to clearly and effectively communicate, like I mentioned earlier, when we make policy changes, communicating that to the public, and being able to work with the administration on any changes that we're making, and then applying a reasonable cooperative approach to discussions. I'm of a very analytical mind with my background as an engineer and a lawyer, and listening to people and really digesting what they're saying, not just people in the public, but the speakers that we have come in, they're presenting a lot of information to us, and it's very important information, but be able to digest that, to ask the right questions, and really hash out what they're saying to be able to make the right decisions is something that I work on.
Okay, thank you. And Christy, the question to you.
I bring to the Grafton School, what I would bring to the Grafton School Committee is a knowledge of the town of Grafton as a lifelong resident of Grafton. Additionally, as I stated before, my educational background is in accounting and in finance. I worked at Boston University for years in educational budgets, which I believe would be a useful source for the Grafton School Committee. In addition to that, I have 3 kids currently in the Grafton School Committee, ranging from grades 4 through 8, and I'm able to see what's happening in each school as I hear about it every day at my dinner table. In addition to that, I've worked collaboratively with leaders across the district, including the superintendent, the chief of police, the town administrator. We've worked together. We've gotten 9 lit crosswalks across the town by working together. I believe we always must work together in order to embrace change. In addition to that, I've worked with the Grafton Public School literary director and with the Grafton Public Library to create a new reading program this summer, and I'm very proud of that. So I believe that those are the reasons why I would make a good candidate for Grafton School Committee.
Okay, thank you. And Craig.
Could you just repeat the question?
Sure. It's sort of a combination of a couple of them, actually. It's asking what experiences and what qualities you would bring to the school committee that separates you from your fellow candidates.
Well, I think the first quality would be my height. I think the qualities that I have, I mean, as I mentioned, my professional background before going into the private sector, working in schools. Like Laura, I grew up with a first grade teacher for a mom, 30 years in public education. I was the student who, if Mrs. Martin in grade 3 didn't take the time to understand who I was and where I was destined, because I'm old enough to, I'm old enough, I was destined for the shop track once I got to junior high school. And thankfully along the way, I had teachers that helped meet me where I was, and support me along the way, so I could become what I wanted to become, which was that teacher for someone else's kid. And over the years, I did that for thousands of students in New Jersey, Mansfield, North Attleboro, Blackstone Millville, Medway, and everywhere in between. It's like a Bad Johnny Cash song. Well, there's no such thing as a Bad Johnny Cash song. But I think those are the things that I bring in terms of my own background as a student, how I came up and was supported, and what I tried to emulate in my classroom. I'm a hard worker. I was the first one in the door, to the chagrin of both custodians in North Attleboro and in Medway, because I knew when they weren't at work early. I think those are the things that you need to have someone who's willing to go the distance for you, who can understand where you are and where you might be going, and also having some experience to say, this could lead us down a path that, not a certainty, but it certainly could.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to closing statements, which are a minute each, and we're doing them in reverse order from the way we started. So that means, Elizabeth, you go first.
Thank you. So you've heard what I had to say today, and hopefully you've seen what I put out there on social media, so you have an idea of what I've done and who I am. I think that I would be an ideal candidate to continue another term on school committee because of my extensive record of volunteering for the schools proves that I would bend over backwards to help. The experience and knowledge that I would continue to bring to the school committee would help guide our schools through these challenging days ahead. My background as an engineer and a lawyer mean that I bring a kind of analytical approach and a unique skill set in contract and policy drafting, as well as negotiations to the committee. And the struggles I went through to succeed fuel my passion for the importance of education to students and to the community. I have been honored to serve on the school committee these past 4 years, and I think I've done a good job. And I ask that you do me the honor once again with your vote on May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. And Laura, to you.
Thank you. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and to my other candidates. Grafton deserves an experienced leader on its school committee, and I have dedicated the past 13 years to serving the schools and this community. I don't just show up during election season. I've been there for our students. I've been there whether it's knocking on doors to advocate for additional funding, starting the Popsicle Social for our incoming kindergartners, helping our children walk to school on Walking Wednesdays, leading Colonial Day, reading to our preschoolers, working on equitable policies, answering your COVID questions late into the night, or celebrating our teachers on Teacher Appreciation Day. I bring a deep understanding of our budget, experience with collaborating with other committees and town offices, and a proven record of improving our schools. I ask for your vote. Vote often on May 21st. Thank you.
And Christy.
Thank you as well to the League of Women Voters and to all the candidates up here this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. As I mentioned earlier this evening, Grafton isn't just a town to me, it is my family. And I know firsthand the strength we possess to have a successful future. But to realize that potential, we need change. We need leadership that not only talks about transparency, accountability, and careful planning, but truly embodies those values. If elected, I pledge to be that change by drawing on the values instilled in me here as a student in Grafton. Working together, we can ensure that our schools thrive so that many generations ahead will be as proud to be from Grafton as I am. Please vote for Christy Kilbazinski, or the big pink signs, on Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. And Craig.
Thank you again for having me. For me, I mean, you've heard answers, 90-second answers. You see things on Facebook. If you really want to get, and you can go back over 3 years and see all my answers, you can see everything I've posted. More importantly, sit down or show up on a Saturday morning when I'm out holding signs, have a conversation. Because a lot of these topics and questions and things, they can't be answered in 90 seconds or 15 seconds when she holds the sign up. It's hard to put something on Facebook where it really deals with the complexity of all these different things you deal with within a school. Again, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face, I have 22 years of experience working in all these different schools, dealing with all these different issues. Having adjustment counselors at each building, having guidance counselors and staff working with our students on a daily basis. And I think all those different things I can bring to bear for our community to move our students forward to be that little bit better, and really to help ensure that when they leave us, they're prepared for whatever they encounter.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates for being candidates and putting yourself forward. A reminder to Grafton voters that on Tuesday, May 21st, oh my gosh, you will choose two of these candidates. And again, their names are Craig Julis, Christy Kilbazinski, Laura Often, and Elizabeth Spinney. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And we're going to be ready for the select board candidate.
Great job. And funny. It's hard to put the humor in. I appreciate that.
No, it's not. You just do it.
You know. I'm not a professional comedian.
I'm not either. Maybe that's one of the questions.
If you can take a seat, then we can get started.
Settle this thing, basketball. One-on-one. Not. Like 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So now we'll meet the school select board candidates, where there is one open seat for a 3-year term and 2 candidates. As with the school committee candidates earlier, opening statements will be 3 minutes each. We'll start in alphabetical order. When we get to the questions, candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer, and closing statements are 1 minute each in reverse alphabetical order. So we have 2 candidates here, Craig Dauphiné and Ray Mead. Okay, I don't know who you are. Okay, good, thank you.
I think my name tag is right here. I'll just put that up there.
Well, that works out well. So we'll start with opening statements. You have 3 minutes each, and I guess, Craig, you will go first.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. That's like usually not the norm. So
I got a little coaching.
Thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this event on. It's great to be here. It's great to see everybody that came out to be a part of this event. So, as Bob Hassinger said, some of you may know me. I've served the town before, but for those who don't, my name is Craig Dauphiné. I grew up in Grafton. Went through the Grafton public school system, married a Grafton girl, best decision of my life. She's in the back. And together we raised 4 daughters here in Grafton, again, who all went through the schools in town. And we also own and operate the Grafton Country Store, and are proud and honored to be stewards of 2 Grafton Common, where the store resides. And restoring that building and keeping it for the community, for the common, and for everybody to enjoy is truly an honor for us. So that's kind of my personal life. My professional life, I've been in the concrete and the construction industry for 40 years. I've been a manager for about 25 of those years, leading teams of people, responsible for P&Ls, budgets, union negotiations, labor, operations, back office, maintenance, sales, the whole bit. When I left that job about 8 years ago after running concrete companies for that length of time and took a job as the executive director for the Massachusetts Concrete and Aggregate Producers Association, which is a long way of saying we're a nonprofit association representing the concrete industry in Massachusetts. So in that role, I do a lot of education, promotion, marketing, a lot of legislative and advocacy work on behalf of our association. And in that role, there's a lot of committee work. Getting to my town service, so I've served on about 12 committees, I think, over the last 25 years. I was on the select board for 12 of those years, planning board for my two kind of elected positions, planning board for 3 years, and then a host of other appointed committees through the years. Capital Improvement Planning Committee, 3 building committees, shared services, EDC. So community service, this community, and my love of this town has really brought me forward to give of myself and to volunteer my time to this town. It's been a really big part of my life, and it's a really important part of my life, and my wife has been incredibly understanding of me going off to meetings and doing all kinds of things to serve the town that I grew up in, that we both grew up in, and that I love. So through my work in my town, I've served on a lot of committees, and I love committee work. I think it's a powerful tool when done right, and I hope to bring my experience and knowledge to the committee and work with them towards the betterment of our town.
Thank you. And Ray, 3 minutes to you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank the league too. I'm Ray Mead, and I'm going to tell you why I'm the best candidate for the select board. My goal has always been to simplify processes, make common sense decisions in the best interest of the town, and save the taxpayer money. I'm a current member of the board, so I'm up to date on current issues. I also served on the board from 1989 to 1996, took a little time off. I've served the town for 53 years, 32 on the fire department, 10 years on the select board, 21 years as moderator, and numerous years on boards and committees, some of which I'm still on. Spending 53 years on serving the town sounds really good, but what you've accomplished in those 53 years is what really counts. Here are some of my accomplishments over the years. I designed and built the Silver Lake bathhouse and built the basketball court at Nelson Park with no labor cost to the town. I spearheaded the construction of Roney Park and still maintain it with my wife and Roger Currier at no cost to the town. I suggested that we use ARPA money to create a heat assistance program, which we did for $20,000. I volunteered to manage the renovation and provide some of the labor at Fire Station 2. This will be complete in June, and we'll start Fire Station 3 in July. I moved up the ranks of the Grafton Fire Department to become a district chief. I introduced the first standing operating procedures for the department. I was the first fire prevention officer in the Grafton schools, bringing fire education to the schools for 16 years. I'm currently working on negotiations with Tufts University to increase the payment in their pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. I negotiated 2 40B affordable housing projects, which will bring road improvements and $1.3 million in cash payments to the town, not including taxes on those projects. As chairman of EDC, I initiated a gathering of current and potential businesses to meet so that the committee could understand their needs. As chairman of the ambulance committee for 38 years, I continually push for less costs and more services to the town. We went from paying over $100,000 for basic life support, and now we have a dedicated 24-hour paramedic-level ambulance at no cost to the town. I served on numerous building committees, and I'm especially proud of the fact that they used my suggested design for the addition at the North Street School, which saved tons of construction costs. I was the emergency management director for 11 years. Like other parents, I got involved in sports with our children growing up. I coached youth soccer for 10 years. I was an assistant Grafton Little League coach for 5 years. I was a varsity coach at Holy Name High School for 11 years. Excuse me. When you look at what you have for experience, you need to be able to have accomplishments. I have both. I look for alternative ways of doing things and providing funding to save taxpayer money, whether it's funding the reconstruction of George Hill, providing much-needed heating assistance to our residents, supporting economic development, or getting our ambulance service for free, and saving $200,000 volunteering to renovate 2 fire stations.
Okay, Mr. Mead, I'm sorry,
Oh,
your time
I'm
is
sorry.
up.
I wasn't looking over there.
Okay.
I had one more thing to read, but that's okay.
That's okay. You can fit it in somewhere later, I'm sure.
Sure.
Okay, so Ray, you're going to start up with our first question. You're going to go first. And this was one that I believe was given to you both. What do you see as challenges that face the town, and where do you see Grafton in the future?
Well, our challenges are financial between school and municipal. Economic development is a challenge. Now that sounds funny because I've been saying that we've got an enormous amount of economic development going on right now, and it's going to bring in great funding and great revenue. But in 10 years, that economic development is going to go away. How do we fund the town at that point? We're not a small town. People say, oh, it's a small town. It's not a small town. We have 20,000 people. We're a small city. And population growth won't stop. The cost of living in Massachusetts, including Grafton, keeps going up. We'll lose our younger population because they can't afford to live here. Traffic is increasing. I know this all sounds really bad. But creative thinking is necessary to bring Grafton into the future. Shared services like our partnership with Westboro on regional dispatch needs to be expanded to other services. We will probably have to change the town administrator's role to a town manager's role because they're going to need more authority. We need to look to surrounding towns our size to learn how they do it. Population is increasing. It will not be affordable for most people to live here, and this is really, really important to me. We need to have improved services for older people, like retirement communities. We need to be able to keep people in their homes or at least give them an affordable place to live.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, a question to you?
Yeah, when I looked at that question, I looked at it a little bit differently. Just with my business experience, I'm thinking about the challenges that we have, and I always start with the micro. So I want to give you a micro and a macro version of what I think the town's challenges are. In a micro version, I always think about the operation of the town hall. The job that Evan has is very similar to the job that I had in the private sector. Running a big operation, and he's got 16 departments to run with all types of department heads and personnel and problems and staff. And so to me, the number one challenge is always to keep good staff and to keep well-trained staff that understands that their role is to serve the people of this community, right? So we all know everybody's having a hard time finding help. So to me, that's number one. We want to have good people in this building to service our town residents. The other thing is committee members. We have a lot of committees in this town, and the committees in this town do a lot of work, and it's important work for the town. So we want to continue to be able to attract residents to serve in these committees and bring their talent and their time to the different committees, whatever their passion is. The budget is always a challenge. So that's another, to me, micro. That's operating system that we go through every year. As far as the macro, it's always, to me, it's the balance between preserving open space, residential growth, and commercial development, right? And then how are we going to deal with the reaction of that? So if we have all this residential, how are we going to service these people with water, sewer, infrastructure, schools? So to me, that's kind of the macro, the big picture challenge moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to get into our first question from the audience. And Craig, you'll go first on this one.
Okay.
There are two versions of it. I'm trying to figure out which one to ask you. Let's go with, how do you see the town's financial position, and what can the board do to improve it?
Well, from what I've heard, I'm not currently on the board. They're about ready to present the balanced budget for this year. So that's a good thing. So where Evan and his department heads are doing their job, and the finance committee is doing their job to review what's presented to them and hopefully go to town meeting. The future, I think we have to live within our means. That's always been kind of my position is that we have to make sure that we're providing services for the community, and every department in this building is working and functioning the way it should be, and they need the funds to do that. So it's challenging at certain times in certain years, but we've always seemed to make it work. You know, the 12 years that I was on the board, we always seemed to be able to figure out a way to get to that next budget cycle with the money that we had and provide good services for the town.
Thank you. And Ray, the question to you?
The, you know, we have a real budget, we have budget issue coming up in fiscal year 26, and that's with the supposed, you know, school. I watched their 5-year projected program the other day, and their budget is going to go up 8.1%. That equates to about, I don't know, $2.5 million, somewhere around there. What the board is doing, and what I'm doing on the board, is I'm promoting economic development. I'm chairman of the Economic Development Commission, and right now we have a project in over in Centec Park. UPS is going to build 864,000 square feet. Another 30,000 square feet is being built there also. Right across from Sunshine Sign, 200,000 square feet of buildings are being built there. Wyman Gordon's has an approval of 335,000 square feet. I'm not overly in favor of that one, but it's there and it's ready to go. And Tufts is planning on expanding into their science park, which is going to generate revenue. I know people have talked about an override. There's talk about that in all of that. We need to find alternative ways to offset that override, not offset the whole thing, because we're not going to be able to do that, but to pay it down a little bit. So that's what I plan on doing, and I know that the board that I serve on currently is doing that also.
Okay, thank you. So Ray, you're going to be the person to start the next question, which builds on what you were talking about. We have several questions here about economic development. And so you were starting to talk about what's coming into Grafton. What steps can the select board take to encourage new growth in the next few years?
Well, that's done through the EDC, the Economic Development Commission. The board does help on that situation, but also the planning department has a development end of the town, and they deal with that on a daily basis on the development. So we support them in that situation, but I also spend time talking to developers about building here, building there, wherever it is. Steve Goodman, who's building the 200,000 square feet over by Sunshine Sign, is a friend that he and I worked on Country Plaza when it was Country Plaza, and brought Stop and Shop in here. So this guy knows what he's doing, and I talk to him directly. So you got to get involved. Emery, are you holding that up? Oh, geez. Sorry. But you got to get involved. You got to, you got to step out of your comfort zone for a little while and go talk to people and get developers to move into town and build buildings. We need that revenue. Unbelievably, how much we need that revenue to support our budget.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, the question to you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ray. We need to attract more commercial and industrial development here in town, and that takes time. We built Discovery Drive years ago, and we have one building which happens to be a Tufts Biolab up there where they pay they have a pilot program in lieu of taxes that we negotiated with the town. I think this is the third negotiation. I negotiated the second round with them for a payment for that, in lieu of the taxes. The UPS property, when I was on the board before, Tim McInerney, who was the TA at the time, and the board negotiated a deal with Tim Russell, who owned the property, to bring a zoning law change to town meeting to try and get that property rezoned, because he couldn't sell it and market it the way it was. And I don't know if it was residential or multifamily, but through the work with Tony Russell, and bringing it to town meeting, we're able to get that property rezoned. Tufts, UPS bought the property, and I'm glad to see that they're finally taking that project off the shelf, and they're going to start building that. And I think at the time, the building permit alone was going to bring, I think, around $400,000 to the town, just because of the operating systems inside that facility. So when that building is built out, it's going to bring great revenue to the town. We need to work with the WBDC, the Worcester Business Association, and help them, have them help us bring other businesses to Discovery Drive and other areas around town.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Craig, you'll be first.
Yeah.
Appointments to boards and committees have at times been controversial. What is your philosophy of appointing or not reappointing members to committees and boards?
Okay. So the 12 years that I sat up here, when we would do annual appointments, that's one of the responsibilities of the Board of Selectmen or the Select Board, is to do annual appointments. And we appoint a variety of committees. And if there are committee members that their appointments came due, and if they applied to be renewed and continue to serve, we respected and honored that request, and we reappointed them. If there's a vacancy, then and if there's more than one person for that vacancy, we have them come in and have them, talk to them about the position, and then the board would make a decision. But if people are trying to continue their service, unless there's an issue with that person, and it's not like if they were disagreeing with us, but if there was some type of ethical breach or issue with other board members that was brought to our attention, we would reappoint them. That's how I learned. I think that's how it's fair. If we have people that want to serve and are passionate about something, then we should let them continue to do that. I wouldn't replace somebody if somebody had the desire to continue their service.
Okay, thank you. And Ray, the question to you?
So 3 years ago, the board changed their policy on appointments to committees and boards. And what happened was, and Craig, when I was on before, that's how we used to do it. We used to just, if you wanted to get back on, you got back on. But the board changed the policy and said, we now want to interview everybody. I wasn't totally in favor of it, but it voted and it passed and it went through. So now everyone gets interviewed. So a person who's been on a board or a committee, for a long, long time, someone else now gets to interview before the board, and sometimes they get picked, sometimes they don't. But that to just keep reappointing the exact same people who have been on boards and committees for 12, 15, however many years it is, there are other people who want to join and want to get on boards and committees. And now that process is in place so that they're allowed to do it.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, Ray, you'll be first. Worcester Street is one of the more contentious topics the Select Board has been tackling recently. Please share your point of view on the issue.
Worcester Street? You mean what?
I don't know.
Oh, you mean 3 Worcester Street? It must
Oh,
be.
3 Worcester Street. Sorry,
Okay.
I thought that
I
was
was gonna
someone's
say,
number for the question.
Worcester Street really it's not in
3 Worcester
contention.
Street. You're right.
Well, so 3 Worcester Street, it's an old fire station. It's the old fire station headquarters. The school department has been using it for years to house their maintenance, their outside maintenance and inside maintenance department. They came to us and they said, we want to renovate the building. They came to the board and said, we want to renovate the building. And we said, fine, it's you're using it, so, you guys can renovate it. We also had businesses in the area come to us and say, we want more parking. So what we've done is we've actually laid out parking, and the highway department is going to be installing parking spaces and striping and that for that building. But I can tell you one thing. There are people who said, well, we should knock down the building and we should build another building for the school department. I will not spend one dime of taxpayer money to knock down a building that we currently use and build another one just so we can knock that building down and have more parking. We're going to have 50 spaces with the new development on Upton Road right behind the Grafton Inn. We have the library. We have tons, and we're going to end up having 18 spaces on the existing property with the existing building and not have to knock it down and build another one.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, the question to you?
Yeah. I'll start by saying so that the building that me and my wife own on Grafton Common abuts this property. So if elected, when it came to that subject, I would most likely have to recuse myself, and I would check with town council to find out, the details of that. I did go to those meetings because we are neighbors to that property, and I was, interested in what was going to go on there. My approach would have been a little bit different. When I went to those meetings, I voiced my opinion as a resident and as an abutter to the property and saying, listen, if you're going to keep this an active municipal building, then you really need to do your homework and do your due diligence and have somebody go in there and evaluate the building before you start spending any town money. They were ready to spend $300,000 without a piece of paper in front of them on a building that we hadn't evaluated. And to me, that's not doing your homework. We need to go in there, figure out if it's still a good structural building, what it's going to need over the next 25 or 30 years, and then make an educated decision on how, if we're going to fix that building, if we're going to tear it down, if we're going to sell it, whatever. My goal wasn't to, have it be torn down. My reason for going is I wanted to see a thoughtful approach and a good decision based on information and the board really discussing what to do with that building and understanding that building first.
Okay, thank you. Craig, the next question, you'll be first. How do we tackle all housing, including affordable housing, while also ensuring the town supports and services for the expanded growth, i.e. fire, police, water, septic, and school space?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, and it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of committee work, and a lot of people getting together to figure it out, because the projects that are being proposed right now that I know of, 130 on the old DPW site, 270 on Snow Road, 50 on Pleasant Streets, a big number down on old Upton Road or Upton Street, and I think I'm missing one. So there's a massive amount of housing that could come, and when this housing comes, it's going to come quick, because these aren't single-family homes that are going to take years to build out. These buildings are big multifamily structures that are going to go up fast, and these people are going to be in there, and the curve for us to react is going to be a lot shorter. So we need to get in a room and figure this out. I don't know if the current board is doing that. I haven't seen anything on the agenda as far as the reaction to this growth. I see a lot of talk about bringing these people in and bringing this 40B, massive density projects to areas of town where it's not zoned for it. So I have concerns about that, because this is going to change the landscape of our community forever. But we do need to talk, if it is going to come, we do need to talk about how we're going to service and if we can service these. So that conversation needs to happen now.
Okay, thank you. And Ray, the question to you?
So prior to any of these buildings being proposed, one thing that is done and that we did was we checked with the sewer department, we checked with the water department to make sure that they have adequate facilities and water and sewer to build all of these projects, and they do. So we checked on that, because that's a big question. So if for example, Jay McGill's building down on Providence Road, we have Pleasant Street, we have Upton Street, we have 140 near the center right here, we have Snow Road, we have Pine Street, we have UPS, Centec Park, 200,000 building Steve Goodman, Wyman Gordon's Tough Science Park. We have checked with all of our municipality or municipal services to determine whether or not we can support these, and we can.
Okay, thank you. Ray, then, looks like one of the last questions. I'm not sure if it's the last, but we're getting near the end there.
It's almost nighttime, isn't it?
This is to you first. Is protecting green space a priority for you as a select board member in Grafton?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. I do want to protect green space. And I do want to put buildings, industrial buildings, and I say commercial because we can't put another commercial building in town, in the areas where they're designed to be. So that's down in Centec Park and Pine Street and Tufts University. But I'll tell you, I drove through town extensively putting up signs. And I went, oh my God, some of these houses, it's huge. And they're on little teeny tiny lots. But I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. And I'm absolutely always in favor of purchasing land to save. Voted for every single one of them. And I really wish personally that houses would just come to an end in Grafton and we just dealt with what we have.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, the question to you.
Yes, open space and preserving open space is a passion of mine. And when I was on the board before, we were able to buy several large parcels and protect those and use them for recreational use, you know, for our residents and whoever comes to Grafton. So, and we're able to do it in a really cost-effective way. We bought Pell Farm up on George Hill Road through a grant and through some CPC money to protect that. It was like, I think, 140 acres. We bought Hennessy 2, which was 100 acres. For $1 million, we sold off 10 frontage lots for 100,000 each, and we protected 90 acres of property. So the town got all of its money back, and we preserved 90 acres. And we bought Hennessy 2, which actually is where the DPW is now. So, and the rest of it is still in preservation. So, I think we need to do that to keep the character of our town. We're seeing all this growth, a lot of residential, some commercial, and we need a balance, and that's hard to do. But when parcels come available, we need to take a really hard look at it, because it's not only preservation land, it's a financial winner for the town, because that property potentially would get developed, and then we would have to service those people with schools and fire, police, and infrastructure, and that costs money. That costs taxpayer dollars. That's why we're in the situation we are now. We have too much residential population versus the amount of commercial space that we have. So land preservation is both an economic advantage and a preservation one too.
Okay, thank you. Craig, you're going to go first with this next question. What is most important to you for the board to accomplish over the next 3 years? I think this is a more personal question. What do you hope to accomplish in the next 3 years?
Yeah. Well, if elected, what I hope to do is to bring my experience, my knowledge from serving the town, from my professional life to the board, and to build consensus with them. And I've served in a lot of committees, both with work and with the town, and I found out the ones that are the most successful is where you can build consensus. And first, to build consensus, you have to earn board members' respect and trust, and you have to work together as a team. And if you can build that trust and respect, then you listen to them, and they listen to you. And I come in with a lot of experience, but I don't pretend to have all the answers or know everything. I'm open to ideas, suggestions, input, and that's the power of committee work, is to be able to bring people together to work towards a common goal and come up with the best solution possible. And that's what committee work is, and I've been honored to serve with dozens of people in town over the years and do a lot of that good work. But I guess that would be my goal, is to come here, bring what I can to the table, share with my board members, and work to build a relationship with them so we can do good work for the town, because it's unselfish service is what this board, it's not about me or anybody else, it's about what's best for the town. So that's the goal.
Okay, thank you. And Ray.
Okay, you're going to have to run that question by me again.
So the question is, what is most important to you for the board to accomplish over the next 3 years?
Over the next 3 years, we have to stabilize our budget. We have to make sure that the economic development that is on the books is completed, and that we can get enough revenue out of that economic development to pay the bills. As I said, the school department is looking at an 8.1% increase. We do have an issue with UPS, and I did have an issue with UPS. UPS was given a TIF where it's a 15-year TIF, and the town on average gives back to UPS about $1.3 million a year for a total of $19 million over the 15-year TIF. I tried to get that rescinded, but that didn't happen. So we really need to make sure in the next 3 years that we can pay the bills. Just like my signs say, action and results, and that's what I do.
Okay, thank you. So we're ready to go to closing statements now. So you have a minute each, and we're going to do it in reverse from the way we started. So that means, Ray, you are first.
Okay, I didn't write anything, so I'm going to wing it.
Okay.
So, I'm Ray Mead. A lot of people know me. A lot of people know Craig too. We used to play basketball together a lot, and I've been around a long time. 53 years in serving the town. I've done a lot of things. If you listened at the beginning, you heard all of the accomplishments and all of the things that I've done, and all of the work that I've done to make sure that the taxpayer doesn't have to pay for everything. For example, a lot of the buildings that I built, the renovations, the Roney Park, I could not be any more involved in this town than I am. I tried to retire in 2020, but it just doesn't seem to work. I just keep doing more and more and more, and I do it in the best interest of the town and to save the taxpayer money.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, 1 minute to you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, people have asked me why I'm coming back, and it's a good question. And for me, it's a good time in my life to serve. I enjoyed my time here. I've taken a break, and the timing is right for me to come back. There's a lot going on in town, and I think bringing my 12 years of past board experience, my planning board experience, and my work experience to the board, I think would be valuable to them, and I would love an opportunity to help. I became a manager at a very young age, and even served here at a young age, and I took on a saying that I try to live every day, and the saying is, a leader does so by serving others, and it's a famous saying, and I try to, whether it's my work life, my town service, and even my home life with my family, that's how I try and do. A good leader is there serving other people. And that's, I probably know more true than sitting up here. We're serving the residents, the taxpayers of Grafton. We're serving the administrative staff here, helping them to lead this town, giving them direction and support along the way.
Okay.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you so much. I want to thank both the candidates for Select Board, for running and for serving your community. On Tuesday, May 21st, Grafton voters will choose one of these candidates, Craig Dauphiné and Ray Mead. So thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.